Here I am, just minding my own business, trying to go 1-0 this week, and I'm getting bombarded with college football playoff propaganda.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we will talk about what the numbers say about the Duke Blue Devils and what's supposed to happen this weekend. But there's a reason why you play the games, folks. Do not sleep on Duke. You're going to have, interestingly enough, the first game between two Cuban-American head coaches. Manny Diaz, who used to coach at Miami, coaches now at Duke, and of course, our own Mario Cristobal. We'll talk about blue chip recruits who are set to visit this weekend. I know it's never going to be as loaded as it was last week against Florida State, but you've got some important ones who are going to be in the building for that 12 noon kickoff against the Blue Devils. But I want to talk about what the media is now saying about where Miami is going to end up in terms of the college football playoff landscape. And this is quite frankly shocking to a lot of people. You see the way folks are reacting on social media to what was put out. These are ESPN FPI odds, computer-generated football power index. It's this analytics-based formula. And when folks out there in the college football landscape actually see the Miami Hurricanes, and by the way, folks, just so we get this clear, these are not the odds to win the championship. These are the odds to get into the dance. These are the odds to be one of the 12 teams that are still standing at the end of the regular season and at the end of the college, the conference championship games. But when a lot of folks in the college football establishment, fans of the old SEC, they see Miami sitting atop the field right now with the 89.6% odds to reach the college football playoff, I see a lot of bewildered reactions, some angry reactions like, what? What are you talking about? They ain't played nobody. They're not playing anybody. Well, okay, that's a big part of the reason why their odds are so high to get in, okay? Miami leading the field with 89.6% odds. And let me throw out a disclaimer, by the way. If there are any Miami Hurricanes players or Miami Hurricanes coaches who are currently watching this or listening to this, shut it off, find something else to do. This is what Nick Saban used to refer to as rat poison, right? You don't want anyone to see this and buy into their own hype. But Miami on top with the 89.6% odds. Oregon, who's currently the top-ranked team in the country, unbeaten right now in the Big Ten, 87.3%. Penn State, 84.1%. Georgia, 83.9%. Let me go down a little farther. Then you've got Texas, Ohio State, Indiana, Tennessee, Boise State, Notre Dame. Now, remember, it's tricky for Notre Dame because they don't have a conference to win, so they can't get one of the top 5 seeds. They're at large is their only option. BYU, Alabama. Only who would have ever thought you'd see Alabama at a coin flip odds to make the CFP? Texas A&M, Iowa State. You have to go all the way to 31.9% odds to Clemson. And so one of the reactions that I've commonly seen to this is, wait a second. Clemson's so much better than Miami. Why does Miami have better odds? Okay, so let's talk about the external factors and the internal factors that have led to the Miami Hurricanes somehow. And by the way, there's still a lot of work to do. This is not something that I am proclaiming because as a long-suffering Miami fan, like even before the season started, I had a hard time believing Miami could be a college football playoff team. That's just my personality. I'm more of a wait and see type of guy. You have 4 games left to win, potentially 5 with an ACC championship game that could be looming. So I'm not counting my chickens before were hatched here. But if you're going to explain why Miami leads the entire country right now in odds to make the college football playoff, let's talk about the external factors, the internal factors. You start with the external factors. The reason why Miami's in the spot that they're in, relatively speaking, the Hurricanes, out of all those teams we ran down, have the easiest remaining schedule out of the other teams in contention. So, and with no losses right now at 8-0, Miami has a bigger margin for error than the one-loss teams that are on the list, because a lot of those teams already have a loss. Alabama's got 2 losses. They still have over 50% odds. So with the margin for error that Miami has, I don't want this to happen, but the Hurricanes could conceivably, let's say, lose in the ACC championship game, finish 12-1, still qualify for the college football playoff at 12-1. Something like that would be less likely for Clemson. Clemson already has a loss, so if they were to lose in the ACC championship game or prior to that, that would be 2 losses. It would be much harder for them to get in. There's also a scenario, we'll talk about this a little bit more on this episode, and I don't want this either, but Miami, because of tiebreakers, the Hurricanes could go 12-0 and not even qualify for the ACC championship game. In that scenario, you would likely still get in undefeated. I know Florida State fans would be like, maybe you won't. It happened to us. You'd still probably get in undefeated into a 12-team playoff. You would get one of those at-large bids. So, Miami, their schedule relatively easy compared to a team like Clemson, who has 1 loss. Clemson has a much tougher remaining schedule on paper. They still have 5 games to go to Miami's 4. One of those is against the Citadel. They're going to win that game. But they've got games against Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pitt, South Carolina still in front of them. So they'll probably be favored in all of those games, but their remaining schedule is a lot tougher than Miami's. Miami has Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. Now, don't get me wrong. Miami could lose to any of those teams. I understand that, but Miami will be big favorites in all of those games. Clemson's remaining schedule is harder. So, and obviously compared to other teams out there that have SEC and Big Ten schedule still to play, Miami has the easiest road, relatively speaking, to knock on wood. And again, this is rat poison. I'm not buying into this. I'm just telling you all what's going on, okay? But Miami conceivably has, relatively speaking, the quote-unquote easiest road to get into the CFP. Then you talk about the internal factors, right? Because this is not all about the schedule. Miami still had to earn the spot that they're in right now with an 8-0 start. Hurricanes have the top total offense in all of college football, top passing offense in the Power 4. Only North Texas ranks above Miami in passing offense in FBS. Hurricanes have shown this season that they can manage big comebacks. They can overcome some adversity with some of the big comebacks that they've had this year. Miami's defense, of course, we've all seen. They have shown holes, but they do have a very talented pass rush, talented linebackers who sometimes haven't always played up to that level. But Miami has a talented front 7, which can erase some of the issues in the back end. And I think most importantly, when you circle back to that top-ranked Miami Hurricanes offense, another internal factor why Miami is given such good odds to get into the college football playoff, Hurricanes running game has really come alive for the past 2 weeks, and it shows another dimension to the top offense in college football, that if you have a team like Florida State that puts all of their energy into limiting Miami's big plays in the passing game, guess what? Damian Martinez, Mark Fletcher, A.J. Allen, they're going to punish you and run for a combined 230 yards. So that's where we are at right now. And again, it's a little bit surreal to even be in this position because, again, folks, and I know that the aggregators who are like the Florida State fans and the Gators fans are going to say, did you see that Locked On Canes? This guy's already talking about being in the college football playoff. I'm not saying that, but as someone who's covered this program and went to this university, to actually see Miami in this position right now to control their own destiny the rest of the way, where 2 years ago, you're losing to Middle Tennessee State. You're 5-7. It felt like the sky was falling. I appreciate the spot that Miami's in. And, again, when I talk about the whole rat poison factor, I know Miami's players are not focused on anything like this. They're just thinking about going 1-0 this week. Cam Ward today, who spoke to the media, was asked about reflecting on his success this year. And he said, quote, "We really don't have time for that." It's not something he's interested in doing. This guy is he's right near the top of the list for the Heisman Trophy. Last I checked, Dylan Gabriel at Oregon now has slightly higher odds than Cam Ward, but he's right in that conversation. He has not at any point this year openly campaigned for that award the way I've seen Ashton Genty campaigning for it. I've seen Travis Hunter campaigning for it. Cam Ward is not out there wasting his time campaigning for individual awards. He's out there just trying to win football games and try to get into that position. And my guy, Robbie Dukes, is keeping that perspective. 1-0 versus Duke. What is it going to take to make that happen? And exciting recruiting visitors. And folks, I know Miami did lose a verbal commit, TK Mew, offensive line. We'll talk about that and why we think that happened. But folks, we are only getting started. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I'm only getting started on the Game Time app. Guys, this is the only ticket app that I use. I'm getting the best prices on the Game Time app, including last minute. The prices go down the closer you get to the event. I'm looking at tickets right now. Duke Blue Devils at Miami Hurricanes in 3 days, this Saturday, starting at $24 on the Game Time app. So, and also keep in mind, when you sign up with our code, they're going to give you a $20 credit. So that makes the ticket practically free to the Miami Hurricanes at the Duke Blue Devils this weekend. Folks, there's a new feature on Game Time called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I love the all-in pricing feature. Shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view in the app right from your seat before you buy. Folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making this live episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. By the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Last I checked, we were just a few subscribers away from 18,000. I would love to get there, and I would appreciate you guys helping us reach that milestone. So if you haven't subscribed already to Locked On Canes, make sure you do that. Make sure you smash that like button as well. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Get a comment here from Craig who says, I really love watching Damian Martinez carry the opponents 10 plus yards. That's been something, and Mario Cristobal talked about Martinez on Monday. Things have really clicked for him the last couple of weeks. If you were like me, you either watched him play live at Oregon State, or if you weren't staying up till 2 a.m., you're watching the highlight reels and stuff, and you saw how when Damian Martinez was at Oregon State, was running decisively, was running angry, was making these huge chunk plays. First few weeks at Miami, you weren't really seeing so much of that. He has really gotten comfortable in the offense. Cristobal talked about how he got here late in the summer, so there was an adaptation period for him. He looks like Oregon State Damian Martinez, and the guy's like a Terminator out there. He runs over people, and Mark Fletcher also has those characteristics. So I love the opportunity that Miami has with their running game. In fact, you look at Duke, and I think that's where Miami, obviously, Cam Ward, who didn't light up the stat sheet last week against Florida State. I expect him to bounce back, but I think Miami has an opportunity again on the ground this week. The Duke Blue Devils are 88th against the run this year. They give up 160 yards per game. So I think Miami can and should run the football to open up their passing game, keep pressure off Ward, because blitzes and sacking opposing quarterbacks is something that Duke does extremely well. They bring a lot of pressure. They blitz a ton to Manny Diaz defense. You know how that goes. Some of the other numbers for Duke this year, they have on offense, and I think this is the reason why Miami are favored by as much as they are. 21.5 points. I thought that was a big number, maybe too big of a number. But I think the reason why Miami's favored by that much is people don't have a lot of faith in Duke's offense. 109th ranked offense in the country, 86th ranked scoring offense in the country. Defense, they're a lot better, of course. 32nd ranked total defense in America. They give up just 327 yards per game on average. The 12th ranked passing defense in America. But again, their rushing defense can be vulnerable. So that's what I would like to see, Miami exploit, hopefully early and often in this football game. So let's talk about some recruits that have events upcoming. We're looking kind of, we got our eyes on, one eye is looking at class of 2025. The other eye is looking at class of 2026, which a lot of work is being done there. But for class of 2025, a linebacker that Miami's been trending for and one that we really want, you recently got that Gabby Urrutia 24/7 crystal ball from Miami to land 4-star Kellen Wiley out of Armwood High School. He has reportedly locked in an official visit. He's visited unofficially several times, including this past weekend. He has locked in an official visit for November 23rd. That's the weekend of the Wake Forest game. So Kellen Wiley, who's, one of the fastest rising linebackers in the country, he's considered kind of a late bloomer. He's really exploded his senior high school season at Armwood. He's got that relationship with Gerard Pringle, Miami's committed running back. They were at the Florida State game together this past weekend. So Kellen Wiley has locked in an official visit. That's a very good thing. Some of the best players in the class for 2026 have locked in unofficial visits for the Duke game this weekend. Like offensive lineman Jackson Cantwell. This dude is an absolute beast. This was reported today by Steve Wiltfong. Cantwell told Wiltfong of On3 Sports about Miami. Their success this year and historically successful culture is exciting, he said. They also have a great offensive line coach in Coach Mirabal and offensive line-minded head coach in Mario Cristobal. So this Jackson Cantwell, this dude is an absolute trench monster. You got to love his dimensions as well. He's a junior in high school right now. He's already 6'7.5", 305 pounds. He's the number 2 overall prospect in the entire country. Number 1 offensive line prospect. He's already taken visits, according to Steve Wiltfong, to Mizzou, Nebraska, Georgia, and Alabama. And after visiting Miami this weekend, he's going to be at LSU the following weekend. But of course, when you're talking about blue chip and big time offensive linemen, you can never count Miami out because Cristobal and Mirabal have that track record of developing offensive linemen. And you just look at case in point, look at how well CeCe Maui Noah is doing right now. This was a guy, of course, who true sophomore this year, looking like he's, probably about a year and a few months away from being a first round draft pick, just a people mover. Of course, this is the same staff that developed Penei Sewell at Oregon. So the track record is there. Offensive linemen realize that. So do tight ends. I mean, it is tight end U. Miami's going to be hosting top 2026 tight end Kendra Harrison this weekend. Another 6'7" skyscraper, 6'7", 243 pounds out of Reidsville, North Carolina. He's the 7th ranked overall player in the class of 2026 and the top tight end. Miami received a crystal ball prediction for a 2026 offensive lineman. Gabby Urrutia at 24/7 dropped that crystal ball for Emmanuel Tucker to get to Miami. 6'6", 280 pounder. Miami offered him last month, according to Gabby. So he's a 4-star offensive lineman. Urrutia put in the crystal ball with a confidence level of 6 for him. So some exciting crystal balls, some exciting visitors this weekend. I want to answer questions from you guys. I called out this morning on the Locked On Canes Insider group for questions to do some Q&A. If you want to join the Locked On Canes Insiders chat, you can click the link in the show description below. I give you guys text messages one-on-one from my phone to yours and vice versa. Breaking news, recruiting scoops, questions and answers, show updates. I let you guys know this morning I wasn't feeling great, which is why I waited to go on in the afternoon instead of the morning today. So check out the Locked On Canes Insiders group. We get this question from Quan the Cane, who says, Donno, there is a world where Miami could go 12-0 and miss the ACC championship game due to tiebreakers. Would you rather make the ACC championship and take our chances, or not make the ACC championship and take the 5 seed potentially, where Actually, you wouldn't take the 5 seed because they have a spot that goes to the highest ranked group of 5 champions. So you would not actually take the 5 seed if you don't play for the ACC championship. So to answer your question, Quan, like I know, some can't, the ones who don't have any guts. If there's any Miami fans out there who don't have guts, you'd say, hey, you know what? Maybe we get screwed over by a tiebreaker, because the tiebreaker is if Miami, Clemson, and SMU all go unbeaten in conference play, because none of those 3 teams play each other this year. If they all go unbeaten in the ACC, the tiebreaker would be how high the winning percentage is of your opponents in conference, which is completely out of your control, obviously. So, I mean, some Canes fans would say, you know what, maybe you go 12-0, you avoid Clemson, who looks really tough this year, and we can get into the CFP at 12-0. You got no guts if you say that. If Miami, and there's no guarantee because they have 4 games left to play, but if Miami can finish their regular season 12-0, folks, I want to have the opportunity to win an ACC championship for the first time ever. We've been in this conference for 20 years. 20 years in the ACC. I want to win that ACC championship. And don't be scared of Clemson. I'm not saying Clemson isn't good. But let's not forget, pretty similar, not the same, but similar Clemson team to last year. Miami beat them with a true freshman starting at quarterback in overtime. So I would love the opportunity. It might not even be Clemson. It might be SMU, but I would love or Pittsburgh. I'm not going to rule them out either. I'd love the opportunity to play in the ACC title game. And you know what? Another thing, if Miami gets left out of the ACC championship game at 12-0, that's just another embarrassing look for the conference. It's like you guys have 2 one-loss teams playing in the championship game, and you leave out a 12-0 team because of some technicality. So I don't want that. Nobody should want that. Let's have the guts. All right, my friends, we'll answer more of your questions on the other side. We got one about avoiding sacks against Duke. A couple of those actually about that, replacing decommits with new commits. Folks, you want to keep it locked right here. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, whether you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you watch on YouTube. We're nowhere near done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And thank you for making this episode your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. I co-host that show with Kenton Gibbs of Locked On Wolfpack. We talk about all the big stories in the ACC. I'm sure we'll be talking some more basketball soon. Miami plays a basketball exhibition tonight, so you guys want to make sure you check that out if you're around Coral Gables this evening. But make sure you check out Locked On ACC, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. We get this one from our guy John in Tampa. Duke's defense is the real deal. Manny Diaz is a master of disguising where the pressure is coming from. What can we do as an offensive unit to avoid falling into Manny's many traps? I'm not so sure that wasn't Mrs. Diaz writing that, but just signing it, John. It seemed very complimentary of Manny Diaz. We get another question that's similar from Jake, who says, do you think Duke will do delayed blitzing and D-line stunts like Florida State did to get to Cam Ward? If so, do you think the O-line needs to – what do you think the O-line needs to do to adjust, and who will be the X factor on the line? So similar questions there. I mean, Manny Diaz definitely, he watched from start to finish and broke it down, Florida State at Miami, and he's going to take whatever he can that Florida State's defensive line did well, and he's going to try to apply that to his defense. We know Diaz is going to blitz a lot, disguise blitzes a lot. If you guys missed the great conversation we had earlier this week with Casey McDermott, former Miami offensive lineman, I encourage you to check that out, because he reviewed, and remember, KC, he played in the Mark Richt era offensive line, so he was going up Manny Diaz, he was going up against Manny Diaz's defense in practice every day. And he brought up some tendencies that he and his teammates saw about Diaz, where a lot of times they'll load up one side to make you think that's where the blitz is coming from, and then they disguise and blitz from the other side. So that might be the sort of thing. And obviously it's the job of Alex Mirabal and Shannon Dawson and company and Coach Ed Pata, who works a lot with the offensive line, to really come up with those tendencies. As far as players stepping up, He needs to be everybody. I mean, Zach Carpenter has been great this year. I know he did. It looked like he got beaten on one play last week. I don't expect that to happen again. Jalen Rivers, he's still kind of hitting that crescendo after missing a lot of time. I'm sure he's going to probably have his best game of the season coming up. CC Maui Noah, I'm not sure if they credit him with giving up a sack or not, but might have. I'm sure he's going to bounce back this week, and Inez Cooper. So yeah, I mean, I can't like single out one guy and says this guy needs to step up. I think the entire offensive line needs to be at their best, because this is one of the most dangerous defensive fronts you're going to see all year. So John and Jake, I appreciate the questions about that. We get this question from Gil, who says, hey, suppose we finish the regular season unbeaten. What's the likelihood we replace the guys that decommitted? He says, I know there's 100 plus recruits at the game last week, so I'm sure the win had a big impression on them. Absolutely. And I'm not, listen, I know that we've had a couple of players, over the last several weeks, months decommit. I mean, one of them who decommitted, recommitted. I mean, Malachi Toney, who was out and now he's back in. And Miami lost a commitment from an offensive lineman, TK Mew, recently. I'm wishing him the best. It seems like a great young man. I want him to find success wherever he ends up. As far as his decommitment, it seemed like that was probably coming more from the Miami side, or at worst, like a mutual decision. Miami still does have 4 offensive linemen currently committed in the class, and they just offered another. This young man, I'm going to butcher his name. I'm so sorry, but Miami just offered a current Georgia Tech commit. 6'6", 280 pounder named Damola Ajidahun. I'm so sorry if I butchered his name, but Miami did just right before the TKMU decommit. Miami sent out a new offensive line offer. And of course, we talk about some other potential 2025s. Kellen Wiley, who's got the Miami crystal ball, he locks in an official visit. Miami is still looking at other possible wide receivers in the class. They flipped Joshua Moore a few weeks back. I know Miami is still looking at guys like Dallas Wilson, some others. Ben Hanks Jr. is another big name Miami is looking at the defensive backfield to try and flip. DJ Pickett, same thing. So Mario Cristobal talked about the trajectory. Like, you see the trajectory Miami is on right now, upwards, and Florida State is in complete disarray. Florida, up and down. They want their coach fired. And guys, let's another thing. I want us all, and I know we're mostly Miami fans in here, but we get some of the renegades, pun intended, who sneak in, the Florida State trolls. They're 1-7, but they're still full of bravado. Over the past few days since Miami beat Florida State by 22 points, I see these FSU trolls that are like, yeah, I'm not impressed. Now, did you see Cam Ward break that iPad on the sidelines? He was frustrated. Another thing I'm seeing from the Florida State fans is, well, Miami went up against Clemson, they'd get killed. Okay, well, first of all, Miami actually, for what it's worth, Miami beat you by more than Clemson did. Miami just beat Clemson last year. So I love it how Florida State is down so bad right now that at 1-7, after losing a game by more than 3 touchdowns, they're attempting to troll Miami because Miami didn't beat them by enough. Miami scored on 7 of the 8 possessions they had in that game. You couldn't do much better than Miami. I mean, we regret that one punt that Miami had in the game. But, Florida State, they limited Miami's possessions down to 8, which is unusually low. I think Miami averages 11 or 12 possessions on the season, and they scored on 7 of 8 of those possessions. But 1-7 Twitter. 1-7, I guess it's not Twitter anymore. 1-7 X is down really bad right now. And by the way, if some folks are analyzing the TV ratings out there, Miami has produced the highest television ratings in the ACC so far this year. It's a funny thing that happens when you're winning football games. Folks, this U logo you see on my shirt, this logo carries weight. When Miami's winning, when Miami's doing well, when you've got the most exciting quarterback in the country, everybody's doing the selly. When you got the most exciting quarterback in the country and you're winning games, people are going to watch. So hopefully we keep sending Miami football to the moon. We get this question from 818 Callie Kane, who says, outside of Cam Ward and Rueben Bain, who are a few players on offense and defense that will need to step up even more for Miami to not only make it to the ACC championship, but to win it and possibly beat teams in the college football playoff? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned two of the major ones, Cam Ward, Rueben Bain, like you mentioned, Xavier Restrepo. You know, I'll give Florida State credit for one thing. In a game that they lost by 22 points, they did a good job against X. I mean, they held Restrepo to 4 catches for 24 yards. You know, he's going to end up going down as the most prolific receiver Miami has ever had. I think Restrepo is going to need to be a big part of Miami's success. If you can keep Martinez and Fletcher running the way that they're running, guys, you remember before, how many episodes did I do before the season about how Miami's going to have this bruising combination of Martinez and Fletcher, wearing down defenses, breaking tackles? I mean, how good has this been the last couple weeks? This has been incredible. So both those guys, super important. On the back end, you know, you mentioned Rueben Bain. We're going to need, you know, Kiko's had some, you know, performances that have not been up to his standards this year. You know, we need Kiko to look like 2023 Kiko for the next stretch of games. And yeah, you need on the back end. I mean, I compliment OJ Frederic as a true freshman, as been, you know, one of the most, maybe the most consistent guy in the defensive secondary so far. You know, we need more from Jaden Harris, more consistency from Mish Powell. And, you know, Mish has played in some of the biggest games you can play in, including the college football playoff championship game last year. So we need our secondary to rise to the occasion. No question about that. We get this question. Hey, what's the redshirt rule now? Someone says, could Damari Brown return and play later this season, and depending on his recovery, still preserve the red shirt? Yeah, so he's only played in one game so far this year. Damari Brown only appeared in the Florida game in the opener. If he were to come back, let's say for the final 3 games of the season, as long as he doesn't play in more than 4 games this year, he could help Miami down the stretch and still preserve the red shirt. It doesn't matter when you play. It just matters how many games you play in, or how many games you appear. I mean, one snap, you know, you could make the difference. So as long as Damari Brown and anybody else only appears in 4 games or less this year, you can preserve the red shirt. And so he could help us down the stretch, and he could come back as a redshirt freshman next year. So you gotta love the details of those redshirt rules. The intricacies was the word that I was looking for. I appreciate you guys, like all of our friends in here, like Mark Perry, who says to hit that like button. Don't just hit the like button, smash the like button. And guys, we're going to have some fun shows before. I don't know. Yeah, Kane Smith, I don't know. I mean, can't consistently be good. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, if and when he's able to return. But we're going to have more shows before this week is over. Tomorrow, we're going to have a crossover episode with my guy, really great guy, and a good host, very good host, JJ Jackson from Locked On Duke. Locked On Blue Devils is the name of the show. We're going to do a crossover, right? He's going to tell me why Manny Diaz is going to come down and get his revenge. I will tell him why there can really only be, you know, one Cuban-American head coach who wins this weekend, and that's Mario Cristobal. Cafecito, baby. They probably both like Cafecito. So do I, to be honest. So we'll talk about that with JJ Jackson on tomorrow's episode. We're going to have the Truth Teller, because remember, the Truth Teller, he's sick. I haven't even seen him in person in weeks. So whatever I have, I didn't catch it from him. But the Truth Teller was sick on Tuesday. He's going to join us on Friday this week. He's feeling better now. So we'll have a lot of shows. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. I'll be on Locked On ACC later on tonight. So we'll talk to you then. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.